Thank you all for your attendance today. We really appreciate your opportunity to just thank our veterans. As our words of wisdom talked about this morning, today is a great opportunity to just stop and be thankful for living in a free country. And we live in a free country because of these fine gentlemen and females that are in front of us. And we can't pay you back for that, but what we can do is we can honor you on Veterans Day. And that's what today is about. For the students that don't know, Veterans Day was formerly known as Armistice Day. It was originally set as a U.S. holiday to honor the end of World War I. Legislation was passed in 1938, dedicating November 11th to the cause of world peace, and to be hereafter celebrated and known as Armistice Day. Unfortunately, World War I wasn't the end of it for us, and we've had several wars since then. The 83rd U.S. Congress, with the urgency of the Veterans Services Organizations, amended the act in 1938 by striking out the word armistice. They replaced it with the word veterans, and therefore why we celebrate Veterans Day today. With the approval of this legislation, it was enacted in June 1st, 1954. November 11th became a day of honoring American veterans and American heroes. That's what we're here today for, to tell you guys, thank you.
Please stand and remove all hats for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Each year, we are fortunate enough to have a speaker that comes to us, and we've been very fortunate to have just such high caliber speakers. This year is nonetheless the same, having high caliber speakers. I'd like to introduce to you our speakers today. It's Dr. Isaiah Stansbury and his wife Cassie. Isaiah served 8 years in the United States Army, and we're going to get to hear a little bit about his experience and just an opportunity to see how service has impacted lives. Without further ado, Dr. Stansbury and his wife Cassie.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. So yes, I served 8 years in the United States Army. I was a staff sergeant. And my last day of active service was actually 10 years ago today. 10 years ago today, I was sitting up at the high school, and I was blown away by programs such as this. I was blown away by the amount of support that you extend to us veterans. I made a promise to myself that day that one, I would make it to a program like this every single year. And two, as long as it still fits, I would put on my uniform as a reminder of what is sacrificed every day for those freedoms. I will admit this was not something that was always important to me. When I was in middle school, I didn't think about as much about service as I do today. I was more concerned about what I was going to do on the weekend, what I wanted to study in college, what I wanted to be as an adult. I was very focused on myself, and I think that was okay. I think that we all should be allowed that part of our history. But the older I got, the more I felt like I needed to shift focus away from myself. And in my opinion, there is nothing bigger than serving your neighbor. After my first year at college, I realized that I needed to focus on something more than just me. I had done that for a whole year. I had focused on myself. And as Gabriel, my son, would tell me when I get to this part of the story, that's when I hit rock bottom. I didn't go to class, I didn't put in the work, and so I failed out. If you don't put in the work, then you shouldn't expect to get the reward. So as you could say, I had a lot of time on my hands and to really figure out what I wanted to do with my life. I knew a couple of things. I knew I wanted to help people. I knew I wanted to make a difference. And more specifically, I knew that I wanted my actions to mean something. It was roughly 6 months after 9/11, and I found myself in the Army recruiter's office talking about what I could do to serve. I joined in August of 2002, 9 weeks of basic training, some of the best and worst times of my life, all kind of wrapped up into one. 6 months of military intelligence training, where apparently I have been disqualified from going on any Wheel of Fortune shows for the rest of my life. They don't tell you that up front, they tell you that afterward. And finally, after all of that, I became part of the military intelligence community, and I thought that everything was kind of looking up. And then March of 2003 happened, and my life changed forever. They actually announced it over the loudspeakers on the entire base. We had officially invaded Iraq, and we were at war. So at that point I said to myself, oh Lord, what have I gotten myself into? The good news is that I cannot bore you with my military stories, because I literally cannot tell you about them. There are some things even 10 years afterward that I simply just cannot talk about, because in addition to working for Army intelligence, I was actually working for the National Security Agency, or the NSA. And so for a lack of a better term, we never call ourselves this, but for a lack of a better term, I was a spy for the military intelligence in the NSA. And it was not a spy like Jason Bourne or James Bond. I was the dude sitting in the darkened room with a bunch of computer screens in front of me yelling for coffee. That was the type of spy that I was. I was a privilege to a lot of very sensitive information. I held a top secret security clearance. I was able to process secret information. When you see the files in the movies that are stamped top secret, there are none of those. You don't really see, we don't have a bunch of red stamps that say top secret. But those were the type of files that I read and I wrote. During my time in the Army, I got to see the world. I got to talk to George W. Bush. When I was in Korea, I briefed the Secretary of Defense on North Korean weapon systems. I assisted U.S. citizens escaping from 2 different enemy-controlled areas. I even helped track Osama bin Laden for a time. So saying all this seems pretty cool. It seems pretty neat. In truth, that's not what a veteran's about. I joined the military because I felt like I needed to do something more than serve my own interests. It hadn't really gotten me that far. Regardless of one's intentions of joining the military, after making that decision, it becomes very clear very quickly that your actions hold incredible weight, not just for yourself, but for your fellow soldier, and for those that you've left in relative safety at home. I will forever be grateful for Cassie for sacrificing her own freedoms and her ability to go home on the holidays whenever we wanted to, or to see her family whenever she wanted, because she felt called to serve with me. I really do appreciate all the honors that you bestow on us veterans. But I would very, very much like to thank you for inviting Cassie here today to talk about her journey as well. Because the family of a veteran has to give up and sacrifice and serve just as much and sometimes more than the veteran themselves. And that sacrifice is oftentimes forgotten. Zeke and Gabe, my sons, you probably know them. They might not totally remember, but they made sacrifices as well. They didn't get to be around family for years. They didn't know their grandparents for years. They didn't get to see how awesome the Iowa winters are. Not necessarily by their own choice, but because of our dedication to you, to all of you. As a service member, and that's what we are. That's what members of the armed forces who serve are. They're service members, and their families, they do what they do so that others don't have to. A veteran's service meant something. It continues to mean something. A veteran is somebody who thinks of others before themselves. We didn't sign the bottom line to be propped up on people's shoulders or to have our names in lights or even to have our own special day. We do it for our community, we do it for our families, for our country, and for you. So that generation and generation can live for the freedoms that we fought for over 200 years ago and we still continue to fight for. Being a veteran, you're part of a legacy, but at the same time, you're a very active part of the future. We honor those sacrifices and service daily, and sometimes we don't even know why we're doing it. For example, do we know why we put our hand on our heart? Do you know why you put your hand on your heart when you say the Pledge of Allegiance or sing the National Anthem? Some of you do. Your science teacher will tell you that your heart is actually positioned more toward the middle of your chest. So if you'll notice my chest here, for all of you back there, there's two sides of it. One is for my unit, all the stuff that I did at my unit. I was part of a unit that did something pretty neat. And then the left side here, this is all my individual achievements. This is all of my individual awards. But I'll ask again, what are we doing when we recite the pledge? What are we remembering when we sing the national anthem? We remember that freedom is not free, that it's been bought and paid for. When we stand up proudly in front of the flag and we speak the words of our nation, we are being more than simply patriotic. It is more than ourselves. We remember the costs of our freedom, the sacrifices of those who came before us, who laid down their lives so that our actions can have meaning. So when we put our hand on our heart, we are literally covering up our own individual achievements. We are literally covering up our own and selfish desires and putting others in front of us. Because it's so much more than our individual achievements. It's so much more than that. Service is so much more than that. So again, I thank you very much. I thank you for having programs like this, for honoring the veterans, for remembering the service of the men and women of your military, and the families and their sacrifice that was volunteered for you. President Reagan is quoted by saying, "Freedom is never more than one generation away from extinction." We did not pass it on to our children in the bloodstream. It must be fought for, protected, and handed on for them to do the same. So thank you very much. And now next I would like to have my wife come up here. Cassie, introduce my wife, Cassie.
So today I'm going to talk about my role as the United States Army wife. So you didn't know you were coming here today for a love story, but that's what we like to do, right? Isaiah and I were married April 24th, 2004. It was a cool, overcast day here in Iowa, and Isaiah had only been home for about 9 days. We had spent our year-long engagement on the opposite sides of the world.
He was stationed in Seoul, South Korea, while I was working on my bachelor's degree at the University of Northern Iowa. One would say our sacrifices started far before our wedding day. So a little backstory. I was born in West Union, graduated from North Fayette. Isaiah and I met at the Wellness Center at UNI playing volleyball. There was a group of us walking back to the dorms after we had got done playing, and this guy kept following me. I wasn't too creeped out, but when we got to the 4th floor and he was still trailing me, I started to wonder how I was going to lose this guy and not have him see where I lived. Funny thing is, he only lived a breezeway away from me. My room was at the end of the girls' wing, and his room was the first one of the boys' wing. We lived 20 yards away from each other. I went to college swearing off dating for a whole year. I just wanted to do what I wanted to do and see who I was. However, I went on one date to a pizza place with that one. That was it. It didn't matter how many times he asked, I said no. But we had spent so many hours together that year, we became the best of friends. The summer after our freshman year of college, I decided that it'd be okay to go on a few more dates, but I probably should tell him first. Isaiah drove to West Union from Traer, and it was almost like the movies. He said, "I have something to tell you," and I said, "I have something to tell you." He went first. I joined the Army. I leave right before school starts. Oh. I was a little stunned, but as you can guess, I didn't tell him what I wanted to say. We just chatted a little bit more about what it would mean for him to join the Army. I went to school that fall and it felt like a part of me was missing. We weren't dating, we hadn't held hands or made googly faces at each other, but my best friend was gone. Isaiah called my dorm room a couple of times when we had a free moment during basic training. He called me and told me he would be back to Iowa before going to Korea. I would like to hang out. I had done everything in my power to forget about him. His life was leading him somewhere else, and I didn't feel like I was intended to follow. It just wasn't meant to be. But my heart and my brain weren't on the same page. Isaiah came home in April of 2003, and we spent as much time as we could together catching up over the last 8 months. The last night before he left for Korea, we stayed up watching movies. He needed to leave about 3 a.m. for Des Moines. After all, it was going to be a year before he came back stateside, and who knew how life would change over that year. I finally got up enough courage to tell him that I couldn't stop thinking about him, that our friendship, in my mind, had evolved to something more. What did I have to lose? He was going to the other side of the world. To my surprise, he felt the same way. Now we had professed our feelings for each other 5 minutes before he was supposed to get on an airplane. We said our goodbyes and assured each other we would figure out how to date on opposite sides of the world. I cried all the way back to my dorm room because my best friend was leaving again. Just before 8 in the morning, my phone rang. It was Isaiah. He'd made his first flight to Chicago and was waiting to go to LAX before he was heading to Korea. He said he'd been thinking the whole way to the airport and on his flight about us and our new relationship and said, "I think we should get married." What? That's all I could think, and said no. What rational person would propose marriage while waiting for a flight and only dating for a few hours, let alone most of which I was asleep? He asked me again, and I sat up and I listened. We were best friends. We never got bored or tired of each other. And there wasn't another person I had ever met that made me laugh as much as he did. Now I'm giving you the Cliff Notes version here, but after a little more discussion, I did say yes to a soldier on a payphone in an airport. I was a resident assistant at Norn Hall, the school year of 2003 and 2004. So my schedule consisted of a full load of classes, monitoring 40 students living in the dorms, and planning a wedding with someone who was 13 hours ahead of me. Now this was before FaceTime or Skype and long before Facebook or Snapchat or Instagram, but we did have a webcam that we could use. It was delayed enough that we used calling cards instead, just so we could see each other's faces. I would stay up till 3 a.m. so I could talk to him after he got off work, and it was a very long year. But now that long year and our beginning of sacrifice is almost 16 years behind us. After we got married, we moved to San Antonio, Texas, his first duty station back in the States. I can remember how big my eyes were when we got to the heart of the city and there were 6 lanes of traffic on each side of the road. I wondered if maybe Isaiah could just simply quit the Army and we could go back to the rolling hills of Northeast Iowa. Alas, once you sign that line, quitting isn't an option. Now this backstory leads to the first word of our theme for this year, which is sacrifice. What is sacrifice? Sacrifice is defined as an act of giving up something valuable for the sake of something else regarded as more important and worthy. We gave up family birthdays, anniversaries, Christmas gatherings, my grandma's famous Thanksgiving meals, all of our friends, and a sense of feeling like we were home. As an Army wife, I learned that there were so many things in this country that were bigger than my needs and what I wanted to do. I can remember calling home for the first time we didn't get to come back to Iowa. My family was gathered at my grandma and grandpa's house like they do every year. Sorry, I practiced this like 3 times, so if I get choked up. I could smell the soup simmering even though I wasn't there. They passed the phone around and told us of their Christmas morning plans. As everybody wished me a Merry Christmas and asked how my Christmas was going. Once I got to hear everybody's idea of Christmas morning, I sort of lost my words. And as you can tell, that many years later, it still hurts. There were several moments like these over the course of the 7 years we were away from serving this country. We became first-time parents in San Antonio, Texas. And most of you know how you get to anticipate for 9 months for the birth of a child. And then you get to go visit that person at the hospital, either a cousin or a sibling or a friend, and you get to give your well wishes to those parents. We didn't get to do that. We lived thousands of miles away from our family. So we got to snuggle our firstborn here and tell everybody how amazing he was over the telephone. Now, I don't tell you these stories to get you to feel sorry for us by any means. In fact, it's almost the opposite. I want you all to know that there are so many people in this country that give up everything to serve and keep you safe. My sister is a veteran. 2 of my brother-in-laws are veterans. I have uncles and grandparents and so on that give up their day-to-day life to serve and protect this country and what it stands for. My niece and nephew have said goodbye to their dad so many times while he gets deployed and they wait for him to come back. But he makes that sacrifice willingly because of his devotion to a bigger understanding of what it means to be free. Our second word of the day is service. Service is defined as the action of helping or doing work for someone, something any of us can do. I didn't wear camouflage myself. I didn't have to go to physical training each morning and stand in formations in the rain. My service came as the support of the soldier who was doing those things. I was the emotional support after a long day. I was the consistent person in that soldier's life who was there to listen when missions were hard and the days got long. My observation of soldiers over the course of 7 years boiled down to this: you will never meet someone who is more willing to help than a veteran. A veteran, having previously served or currently serving, will push your cart to the corral in the parking lot. A veteran will turn and hold open the door for the person behind them. When you need a crew to assemble a new park, or set up some chairs, or move boxes, or walk someone across the street, push a wheelchair, you name it, a veteran will be there. And they never ask, what's in it for me? These men and women know what service is. Statistics show that less than 1% of our nation's population currently serves in the armed forces. That's just over 1 million people. In a country over 325 million people, these men and women have a big responsibility to protect and secure our people and borders. So I'm going to need some help. Lane, would you come up here? Braden and Cole, I want you three to stand up here with me for a second. Now, you boys represent 1% of this entire room. I'll take that in for a second, okay? Your responsibility is to protect every single one of them. You protect them even when they don't agree with you. You protect them when they forget about your family that misses you. You protect them when they take their freedoms for granted. And you protect each and every one of them, no matter what. You're that 1%. Everybody in this room would be protected by these three young boys. Veterans don't do it for the fame and the money. They don't do it for big contracts with sponsors and commercials on TV. They don't do it for the posters that are made and hung on children's walls. They don't do it for the feeling of watching a line form and people waiting for an autograph. They live in service because of a greater calling. A veteran stands tall because they did it for you. They made their sacrifice and served because they believe what this country stands for. They serve so you can play soccer and basketball and listen to your favorite music. They serve so you get to believe you can become whoever you decide you want to be. My sacrifice and service pales in comparison. I would gladly give up those birthday parties, anniversaries, holidays all over again to know that because I made a sacrifice and served alongside my soldier, I am able to stand here today looking at our country's future and knowing you are still free to be who you want to be. One day I hope to sit in this very gym and listen to one of my own sons talk about their sacrifice and service. One day it could be you. I'm thankful for them. I know we are all thankful for our veterans. So today we honor them. Thank you.
none is so easily recognized as the call of taps. It began during the Civil War when Union General Daniel Butterfield wanted a new bugle call to signal the end of the first day or lights out. He reworked an older tune of the melody we know today as taps. It was first played in 1862 and soon became a part of military funerals for both Union and Confederate soldiers. It is still played today at military funerals across America.
Again, I want to extend a welcome and a thank you to our speakers today for a fantastic job. Let's give them another round. If you are a veteran and you could stand right now, we'd like to just give you applause too. So if you have served in any form of military, American military, please go ahead and stand down. So why do we celebrate Veterans Day? I think our speakers summed it up very well. Because there's those that have went before us that have given us our freedoms, that have served for us to have the freedoms that we have today, and that have sacrificed before us. You are the legends. Without you, we would not be standing here today. Without your sacrifice, without your service. And for that, we can never thank you enough, nor repay you. As we leave today, we will leave in silence. Elementary, you as will exit to the elementary. Guests in middle school, we will exit outside for a 21-gun salute to end the day. With that, we'll retire the colors.
Order on. Retire your colors.